how to think, how to act, how to behave in every circumstance. We also thank the spiritual guides of our simple house, FSS, for helping us, for giving us intuition, for enlightening our path, and for bringing all of us together. We also thank our guardian angels for never giving up on us, for always trying to guide us to the path of goodness, to the path of what is right and what is best for us. May we have a very productive meeting today, and may some of the lessons we learn here today make a difference in how we see our lives, in how we live our lives. May we be able to open our minds and awaken our conscience a little bit more to some of the divine truths. So be it. Okay, every time I close my eyes, when I open, there's more people. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, so you decide to be here today? All right. Okay, so for anybody who doesn't know, that's my son. Okay, so today the theme is Let the Little Children Come to Me, and everything that we're going to see here comes from the Gospel of Mark, the Gospel according to Spiritism, and the Spirit's book. We have a lot of text, we have a lot to cover, because this is a very, let's say, extensive subject. And this is just a little bit of it, because there's a whole lot more in the Spirit's book and in other good Spiritist books. So before we start with all the texts from the Gospel according to Spiritism, and Spirit's book, I would like to propose a reflection. So I would like you actually not to read, but to close your eyes, listen to the question, and think about the answer in your head. After every question, I will give you like 30 seconds to think about your answer. Okay? Yes? Everybody understands? Yeah? Okay. So please close your eyes. I'll ask a question. You think about the answer in your head. And once I'm done with all the questions, I'll ask you to open your eyes, okay? So let's all close our eyes, except for me, because I need to read. Do you feel as an immortal spirit? How is this feeling? Do you see your children or parents as immortal spirits too? How is this feeling? As an immortal spirit, do you understand that your ultimate goal is to love and to be happy? Do you see Jesus as your roadmap to reach this goal? Do you feel he is your model and guide? How much effort do you put in your kids to follow Jesus' teachings? So if you have thought about the answers, you can open your eyes. So again, that's a reflection for ourselves. And hopefully, by the end of everything we're going to talk about, we will have answered a few of these questions, maybe a little more in depth, okay? So we're going to start with the whole parenting. I would like to make one thing clear. Even though we're talking about parenting and mostly the relationship parents-children, this also applies for our relationship with our parents. Okay, so anybody here who does not have children, think about your parents. So, in question number 210 in the Spirit's book, Allan Kardec asks, through their thoughts and prayers, can parents attract good spirit instead of an imperfect one to indwell the body of their child? That's a little complicated. Do you understand the question? If I pray and I ask God, can I attract a good soul to be my child? Can I ask for a good one? Please, Lord, give me a well-behaved, nice, evolved, superior spirit. What do you think the answer is? You think it's yes or no? A lot of common sense here. Very good. No. They can, however, improve the spirit of the child to whom they have given birth and whom has been entrusted to them, que foi confiado a eles. It is their duty. What is duty? What is duty? In Portuguese, the translation is dever. Is it the same in Spanish? Dever? So what is duty? What is dever? Is it the same as obligation? Obrigação? Is duty the same as obligation?
More like a task, right?
Yeah, in a way. So duty is not obligation, and it's something that we confuse very often. Very often, we think that a duty is an obligation, that I have to do it. I must do it. No. A duty is something that is in our conscience. It's something that we know we should do, but sometimes we choose not to do. An obligation you have to do, you have no choice. A duty, you can still choose not to do. Make sense? Yeah? Ill-natured children, so children with a not very good nature, are a trial for their parents, a test for their parents. And I think we can all agree, right? Maybe we were trial for our parents too. Okay? So, let's keep going. Still about parenting. In question 582, Kardec asks, can parenthood be considered a mission? What do you think? Isn't a mission something like what St. Francis of Assisi did, or Chico Xavier, or like other, let's say, more famous spirits did? Or do you think parenthood can be considered a mission as well?
There are two kinds of mission. We can consider two different kinds of mission. In a more broad sense and a more specific sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the Spirit's answer, it is without a doubt a mission. Mainly those of us who have children who are not that easy to deal with, we know it's a mission, right? And maybe again, we were not very easy to our parents either. So it is without a doubt a mission. And at the same time, a very great duty. Again, a duty is not an obligation. A duty we are invited to do because our conscience tells us that's what we should do. So it is a very great duty that involves parents more than they might think concerning their responsibility for the future. Make sense? So far, do you disagree with anything? No? right, now that we have established that parenting is a mission, we can even change the top and say parenting mission. So this is the continuation of that answer. It's a very long answer. And the spirits continue to say, God has placed children under the care of their parents so that they may guide them, the parents guide the children, on the path of goodness, no caminho do bem, and has facilitated their task by giving children a frail é fraco, frágil, and delicate organization that renders them accessible to all sorts of impression. Does everybody understand everything? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Look at those two babies and this sweet girl here. How can you not soften up when you see them? Right? Then the answer continues. However, there are those who are more concerned, those parents, who are more concerned with training the trees in their orchards and making them produce fine fruit than with training the character of their children. What does this mean? I don't have any fruit trees. So this is a metaphor. What does this metaphor mean? The training the trees in their orchards. It's a metaphor. What does it mean? Oh, come on, we have so many people here. Help me.
Is it the material stuff instead of, so nowadays it'd be you're so concerned about the education of your kid, but you're not really concerned about building a good, someone with moral values and
Yep.
function in society and things like that?
I work my behind off to pay for the best, most expensive school for my child. But that means I'm at work 12 hours a day. So my child has an awesome school, but their parents not there. Right? So we are more worried about training the trees. We're more worried about the money, about the things we have to do, about being successful at work, about everything other than their moral development. Right? Sometimes we end up thinking that it's the school's job to educate our kids. The school's job is to give instruction. Education is up to the parents, right? The answer continues. If their children fail due to their neglect, they will have to bear the punishment, and the suffering of their children will come back to them in a future life because they did not do what was incumbent on them for their children's advancement on the path of goodness. The word punishment here is in italics because let's remember this was written over 160 years ago, so the language was very different. So here we're talking about not punishment, but consequence. You reap what you sow. Você colhe o que você planta. Right? So if because of my neglect, my children fail in life to become good people, to become honest, then I will have to bear all the consequences of that. Right? As a parent. Whoops, my animation was messed up. So, this is the next question. 583. If children go wrong, despite their parents' care, are the parents responsible? So, question 852 was asking, is it a mission? The Spirit said yes, and they explained everything. If they do well because you help them, good for you. If they don't do well because you neglected them, the consequences will be there for both of you to go through, right? And then in the next question, because there we were talking about the negative, if they fail, right? So now Kardec is asking, like, if they go wrong, even though the parents did well, are the parents responsible? So as a parent, I did everything I possibly could My parents did everything they possibly could for me to be a good person, but I still chose not to be. Is it the parents' responsibility?
Oh,
We love to blame our parents for everything. In my house, like in my parents' house, we have this internal joke. We say everything is the mother's fault, right? Oh, they are rude because their mother didn't teach them. Oh, they don't have table manners because their mother didn't teach them. So we have this joke at my mom's house that everything is the mother's fault. So the spirits say, if we truly did our best, if we know in our conscience that we did the best we could, and the best we can doesn't mean perfection. The best we can means we really worked. We really tried. We're not perfect yet.
Let's try to be right.
As parents, we would love to get that little user's manual out of the hospital with the kids, right? But that doesn't happen.
You want new learners too,
Yes. So, that's what they're saying. If we do our best, if we really work, if we have peace of mind that we did our absolute best, then no. But the more hateful the disposition of their children, the more difficult their task, right? So the more, let's say, bad-natured, the more bad tendencies our children have, the more difficult is our job. Does that make sense?
yes.
And the greater the reward if the parents succeed in keeping their children away from wrongdoing. So, hey, there's merit in trying hard for the parents too, right? And God is fair. God sees it. All right? Then, next question, 583A. So that's another question based on the previous one. If children become good adults despite the negligence of the bad examples of their parents, do the parents obtain any benefit from that? Do we see that? Do we see kids who turn out to be better than their parents? Or kids who turn out to be really good people even though their parents neglected them or abandoned them? Yes, we do. So, will I benefit from my kid being better if I didn't put in the work? Definitely not. And the answer is awesome. God is fair. Right? God is fair. In order to have merit, is not something that we get as a present. Merit is something that we earn. It's something that we work for. No freebies in terms of merit. We need to work to gain, to get merit. Make sense? Yes? So the Spirit said that it's the parents' duty to do their best to put their children in the path of goodness. No caminho do bem. What is the path of goodness? Well, there's, there's an app for that. In the Spirit's book, there's a question for that.
Follow Jesus as a model.
Maybe. Maybe. Question 625. What is the perfect standard that God has offered to humankind as a guide and model? Renata just answered. Look at Jesus. One of the shortest answers in the Spirit's book. Right? And it's not look at Jesus like idolize him, say, oh, Jesus, Lord. No, it's look at Jesus like follow his example. Right? Try to act as he did. When you're in doubt, is this good or bad? Is this right or wrong? Just ask yourself, how would Jesus behave in this situation? What would Jesus do in my place? Usually the answer is fail-proof. And then they continue. Jesus is the highest standard of moral perfection to which humankind may aspire on earth. God offers him as the most perfect model, and the doctrine that he taught is the purest expression of God's law Because Jesus was animated by the divine spirit and was the purest being that ever walked on the earth. Would anybody disagree?
I think Thomas, yes.
Yeah, well, I don't think Thomas disagrees with that. He disagrees with like sitting down and staying quiet. He's learning to walk, so that's torture. I remember traveling to Brazil with my 14-year-old who was sitting there a while ago when he was Thomas' age and he was learning to walk, and nobody got to sleep on that plane. Okay, so we've established Jesus was the most perfect model. What does the guided model say about children? What did Jesus say about children? After half an hour of finally getting to the title of the talk, what did Jesus say about children? Yeah, hint, hint, wink, wink. So in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 10, verses 13 to 16, Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me." But every time I go to the Bible, there are always like the famous passages, right, that we repeat over and over again. Personally, I like to read what came before and what came after to understand the context. Yeah, like why did they say that? What was going on? What situation? And this is the situation. Then people who followed Jesus everywhere they went, the crowd, regular people, then they brought little children to him that he might touch them. Again, our children, our parents towards us, we always want the best for our children, right? Hey, Jesus was curing people. He was blessing people. Hey, please bless my child, right? Isn't that natural? We want the best for our children. So people brought their children, but the disciples rebuked those who brought them because they thought they would like bother Jesus, because Jesus was busy with adults. So his disciples thought the kids would bother him. But when Jesus saw it, he was greatly displeased and said to his own disciples, "Let the little children come to me, and do not forbid them. For of such is the kingdom of God. Assuredly, I say to you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God as a little child will by no means enter the kingdom of God." And Jesus took them up in his arms, laid his hands on them, and blessed them. So let the little children come to me. This was the situation when Jesus said that. Okay? Now, let's see what the Gospel according to Spiritism says about this passage. Okay, this is in chapter 8. So, Allan Kardec explains the passage. Pureness of heart is inseparable from simplicity and humility. You know humility? Humildade. It excludes all ideas of selfishness and pride. This is why Jesus took infancy as the symbol of purity and humility. So far, so good? This is kind of, I'm not going to say obvious, but I think most people understand that part, right? However, there's something else. If we think that most of us here, I would say, are spiritists, or at least believe in reincarnation, isn't that spirit older? Hasn't that spirit lived several times before? That might not be a superior spirit that is in that child. It might be ill-natured or bad nature, or a spirit with bad tendencies, right? So how can we take them as a symbol of purity and humility?
the memories like from the past, and they appear at this stage of the life.
Okay, yeah. And let's see that explained in quite a bit of
They
detail.
are model to, I don't know, a model.
They are
can-
clay
Yeah.
for you, for us,
Yeah.
to model, right?
Yeah, they are open for that.
Yeah, let's understand that with more details. Again, I know it's a lot of text. It looks like it's more because the font is very big, but it is very important information for us to understand. So, it might appear unjust, and this is again still chapter 8 in the Gospel according to Spiritism, and that chapter is called Blessed Are the Simple of Heart. It might appear unjust, unfair, to make this comparison, seeing that the spirit of a child could be very old, and on being reborn to corporeal life, to physical life, might bring with it the imperfections which it had not been able to cast off during previous incarnations. So this is a fancy way of saying what I just said. It could be a spirit with bad tendencies, right? So it might be unfair for Jesus to compare them with pure and innocent spirits, right? So again, we don't know what they were before. And as children, we can't tell. Right? I got this one from a website that said, that's what happens when you leave the baby with daddy. Okay, so we don't know what they were before, right? We don't know all the imperfections that they were not able to work on, right? So we don't know who was what's the name of that biker group? Hell's Angels? Yeah, we don't know who was a Hell's Angel, so. Only a spirit who has reached perfection can offer an example of true purity. However, from the point of view of our present life, it offers an exact comparison because a child, having had no opportunity as yet to manifest any perverse tendencies, presents us with an image of innocence and purity. So it becomes clear that Jesus did not say the kingdom of heaven was meant for children, but for those who resemble them. So again, Jesus spoke in parables. He spoke using figures of speech. Figuras de linguagem. And this is another one. So he wasn't saying that, the kingdom of God is just for children because all of them are pure and innocent. He was saying that it's for those who resemble this purity and innocence. Their age doesn't matter. Since the spirit of a child has lived before, why does it not show itself as it really is right from birth? What do you think? If they lived before, why can't we see them for who they are right from birth? What do you think would be the consequence of that?
I don't know how to explain that.
I'll help you.
Well, you'd probably give up since the beginning. That would be one thing, right? That's the reality, right? Because if you were that cute, you probably just not put your effort there. I don't know. I'm just thinking here. But I think also it needs to allow, because there are development phases, right? So you have to wait for that development phase to get to a point where they actually can express themselves, and then you're going to see the tendencies, right? Because if they don't talk, they don't walk, they're not. You just have to wait, right? It's biological, right? It's biological.
Yep.
They'll start showing when they start making their own choices.
Yeah.
And that comes with age, yeah.
Yeah. Anybody who has a teenager or a preteen understands my side. For anybody who is a bit more curious to know a bit more details, in the Spirit's, oops, that's Portuguese. The Spirit's book, question 585.
I learned that with that.
Kardec, well, you know,
Memorize the question.
it's because I studied for this lecture, but the answer was 2 pages, so it wouldn't fit in here. But in this question and answer, the spirits explained that. At what point do they start showing who they were in previous lives? Okay? So if you're curious, and all the questions that come before this also talk about like when the child is still in the womb or in the belly, like it talks about the whole evolution of the process. So if anybody's curious, I believe mother's tenderness can bestow. And again, like we need to remember this was written like 160 years ago, when in general, having a child and taking care and educating a child was just the mother's job. The father was just the provider. Nowadays, that's not the world we live in. Nowadays, dads, fathers, play a much more participative role in kids raising, right? So that's something else we need to understand. Historically speaking, this was a different time. So every time we see here, when he talks about mothers, if we think about our modern society, we are also talking about fathers as well, because they participate a whole lot more nowadays than they did 160 years ago, okay? So please, dads, don't feel excluded. So, would you look at that?
Participating there.
Yes, see? Look at that. Look, that's priceless. For a mother or father, her child is always an angel, and this is the way it must be in order to captivate concern. She would not be, or he would not be able to offer the same solicitude if, in place of ingenuousness, he saw virility and adult ideas in the infantile features, nor if she or he came to know the past of that incarnate spirit. So again, it's God's wisdom. If they don't look pure and innocent, there's a good chance most of them would be abandoned. Most of us, right? Because we were babies once too. So most of us would have been abandoned if it wasn't for God's wisdom. Right? Make sense to everybody?
Yes, I'm thinking now,
Yes.
there's also the component, because when you reincarnate in the family, there's reasons why one is the father, the other is the mother, one is the son, so that's the reason why you cannot know the past, because you're there to recover from whatever happened among the same group, right?
Mhm.
So that's another reason, would that be the case?
Thank you. Thank you so much for saying that. Yes, that is the case. And there's one thing that a lot of spiritists or reincarnationists have a very wrong idea about. I heard so many people saying, we come with our family as an expiation, as a trial. You know, it's hard, it's a test. That's the wrong idea. We come with who we come, with our parents, with our children, with our siblings, to learn to love each other. God's not punishing us. The idea is for us to learn to love each other. My children are not difficult because I'm supposed to pay for my sins. I'm supposed to pay for something wrong I did. My children are difficult just like I was difficult, because we all have our difficulties. And they are my children because we are here to learn to love each other. My parents are my parents because I'm here to learn to love my parents. We don't have the family we have as punishment. We have the family that we have as an opportunity to learn to love each other. The moment we realize that, all those difficult relationships become so much better. All those difficult relationships get a whole new meaning, right? I'm not here to make my mother's life miserable. My mother is not here to make my life miserable. We're here to learn to love each other. And if we fight all the time, in order to break the vicious cycle, one has to raise the white flag of peace, right? And if we have that understanding that it's about love and not punishment, we can be the ones to ask for peace. Thank you so much for that, Gabriela. Perfect. From the time of birth, ideas gradually take on shape and impulse according to the development of the organs. Like Gabriela was saying, a small child, physiologically speaking, is not capable of the things that a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 20-year-old is capable of. So again, we need to understand and respect the development phases, from which it is possible to say that during the first years, the spirit is truly a child, because all ideas which form the true character remain dormant. They are sleeping. So what you're going to find in question 585 is Kardec saying that when that spirit no longer needs so much attention, so much care, that's when all the sub-personalities that came from all the past lives are going to start to show. And it could be anywhere between 15 to 20 years old, depending on the maturity of the spirit. Okay? So that's when they will start showing their true tendencies as the organs develop. Just look at medicine and biology, right? By that age, boys develop until a bit later, but for girls, a little over after their first menstruation, their first period, they will develop in a less accelerated rate, right? So at about that age, when most of the organs are fully developed, other than the brain, because I think it's up to 20 or 21, then they start showing all those personalities and all the difficulties they're bringing as baggage, right? Okay. During this period of dormancy, up to that teenage age, or even close to adulthood, in which the instincts are also latent. You know what is latent? You know, latente, it's the same as dormant. So they're just there waiting. The spirit is more malleable, more flexible, more accessible to impressions, which can modify the character and which helps the spirit progress. All of which makes it easier for the parents to educate the child at this stage. So mainly the first and second childhood was like from 0 to about 7. That's the age when they are most flexible to new impressions. They are most open to the inputs we give them. Okay? We always say they are little sponges, right? It's not just for knowledge, it's not just for repeating what we say, but they're watching us. They're watching our behavior. Do as I say, not as I do. They are watching. They can see when we are hypocrites. They cannot express in words, but they feel it. Isn't it? Because in order to be a good parent, you have to be a good person yourself. Ta-da! The spirit then wears a temporary tunic of innocence. And so, Jesus was right when, notwithstanding the anteriority of the soul, he takes a child as the symbol of purity and simplicity. Does that make sense to everybody? Any comments, anything to add, to share? Did you find out anything you didn't know?
I think one thing that we focus a lot is when we look at kids, we're so concerned on teaching them, guiding them, and everything about straighten them and so on. But like you said right now, that was very important to say. We have to think about ourselves, because think of Jesus as a model. Who's the model for the child, right? So it's a process of collaborating as well, because not us just teaching the child, but the child is teaching us a lot as well. So if we put ourselves in this apprentice feeling, that the child is an apprentice as such we are, he may be more developed than we are, and then he's here to teach us.
Yes.
It could be any way, right? So as we don't know, we have to work our best to go both ways, like teaching, learning process. It's a collaboration rather than I'm on top, I'm the parent, so I'm teaching you, and that's it, right? Of course, you have to have authority, but you also have to be you have to be humble to understand that you're also in a learning process.
And this is also something that is completely different from most of our parents, right? Because, you know, the whole, in my time when I was a child, yeah, that's not our time. Doesn't, we have evolved as a society. We now know that, like, spanking is not the best option. Have I ever spanked my kids? Unfortunately, yes. Before I had all this knowledge, yes. Why? Just like you said, they are, I don't think any parent here would disagree, but think about yours. If you don't have children, think about yourself and your parents. I think there's no doubt they are our biggest opportunities to develop virtues. Just like we were our parents, right? We tested our parents time and time and time again. Without this knowledge, the tools that our parents had were spanking, slap, punishment. That's why I said if we do the best we can. Everybody's best is different. There's no point comparing. Poor firstborns, because every first child is a guinea pig, guinea pig, cobaya, right? We test on them because we have no idea what we're doing. The second child is fine. You know what's going on. But the first child is a guinea pig. We test on them because we don't know how to be good parents yet, right? So poor firstborns, they suffer a whole lot more. But again, they are our biggest opportunities to develop virtues because they challenge our patience. They challenge our pride. When you have a child, and this starts at all different ages. I know with mine, I think the talk back started later at like 10 or something. But I've seen kids when the talk back starts at 6 or 7. And I'm not saying, no, I don't want. I'm saying like real arguments. Real like, I disagree with you. You're wrong because of this, this, and that. So they challenge our pride. How dare you, little thing, think you know more than me? And sometimes the reaction, the instinct, goes back to our parents. And we immediately just want to shut them up, slap, go to our bedroom, we're done. So it takes a lot of effort to calm down and try to talk to them at their developmental age, right? Because I can't have the same conversation with my 14-year-old that I will have with a 7-year-old. Even though they're both challenging me, what they can understand is different, right? So they are our biggest opportunity to develop ourselves. And in terms of teaching them, can we give something we don't have? Can you give something you don't have? We can't. If we don't have self-love, we can't give love to our children. If we don't have self-respect, we can't teach our children to respect themselves and others. So first, we need to develop the virtues in ourselves so we have them to give to our children. And this is what we are doing here, right? They're over there, we're over here. Because the idea is to develop ourselves. In order to be a good parent, we have to be good to ourselves first. For ourselves and by ourselves. Right? Otherwise, I'm going to be a hypocrite. I'm just going to be giving my kids instructions on how to behave, what kind of person to be, what to do. And I think we are at a day and age that we already understand that this doesn't work, right? And also just going back to the whole blaming our parents. So I hear so many people saying like, well, you know, my parents weren't that good, but I turned out great. Awesome. Good for us. Good for us. But again, we need to remember, parents have responsibility up to a certain age. After that, our free will kicks in, and it's up to us. So, can parents help? Yes, and they should help, first of all. However, after we become adults and we start to think for ourselves, our free will kicks in. And we can't blame our parents for absolutely everything, right? I can't blame my mom for every choice I make. After I start thinking for myself, I can choose my own ways. And it's my responsibility. I'm responsible for whatever choice I make. Make sense? So now that we know that at teenage years and stuff, they start, you know, showing their subpersonalities, I have to confess that I've thought it before, and I think I probably said it once or twice, that famous sentence, oh, what happened to my little angel? Yeah. What happens to everybody and what happened to me as well, right? Again, they were at the right developmental phase. So all those tendencies were latent, were dormant, were there waiting to come out. And whatever I taught them in the phase that were more flexible is going to make a difference. Because if we teach our kids to think, to reflect, to make good decisions, to have discernment, to know what is right, what is wrong, they will use the knowledge we gave them to make those choices. But again, it's our job. It's not the schools, it's not the nannies, it's the parents' job. Because as spiritists, we know that we actually accepted that challenge. We accepted to welcome those children as our own. Again, to learn to love each other. Not as punishment for any of us, but to learn to love each other. Any more comments anybody wants to share before we go to our passes?
No more training trees.
No more training trees, exactly. Let's train the kids. That sounds bad. Yeah. Let's educate our kids, not train. Let's educate our kids.
But you know what? So I love to learn. There's lots of stuff, any new things, and I love to learn. So when I was about to have children, so thinking about it, I was like, okay, I can imagine all the things I can teach him or her. And it'll be amazing and all these things, but then by starting to feel these lessons from Jesus, it's not what we're gonna teach him math or chemistry, or that's not the most important part, because who knows if the society will ever use this again, like 30 years from now. But the character, or building the moral, let's call moral skills, that's now like the focus of all my energy. At least that's what I've been trying to do, and that was one talk like years ago here at the FSS that struck a nerve. Kind of, yeah. Then maybe that's where I should focus my energy.
Yeah. For anybody who can stay for the Lunch and Learn, the Lunch and Learn will actually be a parents' meeting, and we are going to talk about that as well. I know quite a few people can stay, so I will say, first of all, it's going to be recorded, and I am going to send the link to the parents who cannot stay, so you can watch it. But one thing that I will say right now is, again, like I said, we evolve, we improve, we understand things better, more in depth. So what are we doing with the kids over there? We are not trying to create little spiritists. We are not trying to doctrine them to be little spiritists. The children's education, evangelization, however you want to call it, the goal, the objective is to develop and create human beings that can reflect, that can think for themselves, and who can use the virtues they develop in order to act, in order to make choices that will make them human beings. So that's not a school for little spiritists. It's just a tool to help both educators and parents, to help our kids understand all this way earlier in life than we are. So that is the objective, and we're going to talk about it during the Lunch and Learn in a parents' meeting. So for what we're doing there is different. We're going to talk about the methodology we're using and everything, but just to make it clear, we're not trying to make little spiritists. That is a tool, it's an instrument to help raise full human beings that care about their neighbor, biblically speaking, about anybody who is around them. So that's the objective. Okay? I think we need to, yes?
Did you talk about the workshop?
No, I did not. Thank you so much. Do you have the picture there?
Yeah.
Ah, you rock. So next Sunday, March 8th, International Women's Day, we are going to have a very, very special program. It's going to be our workshop. It's the second year for this theme, the right to live. There's a question in the Spirit's book, 800 something, where Kardec asks, what's the most basic right of a spirit or of a human being? And the Superior Spirit's answer, it's the right to live. So we're going to be talking about abortion prevention. Some of you have seen the publications in our WhatsApp group where I put a few questions. So we're going to be talking about Canadian laws, because some people say, oh, abortion is legal in Canada. No, abortion is not legal in Canada. It's decriminalized. We're going to explain what the difference is. We're going to talk about what the law is. We're going to talk about how it happens. And then we're also going to talk about the spiritual side. We're going to talk about the difference of miscarriage, like a natural abortion that happens, and the abortion that the mother provokes, the artificial abortion. What's the difference? We're going to talk about kids who are born and die right after. What is that situation? Why does that happen? So we're going to talk all about that. In cases of women who at a very young age didn't have enough maturity and ended up having a forced abortion, like they went to a doctor and had an abortion, we're going to talk about the guilt that brings and like what's in store for that person in the spiritual world. Nothing is unforgivable. Sometimes we feel like we are unforgivable. Nothing is unforgivable. So we're going to talk about the consolation that Spiritism brings. So what happens after that? What can that spirit expect for the next incarnation? We're going to talk about all of that next Sunday. So it's going to be from 11 a.m. our regular time to 4 p.m. We're going to have 4 lectures. Lunch will be served in between, and we invite everybody. If you can't stay for all 4, stay for as many as you can. They will all be recorded. They will all be on YouTube forever. Forever is too long, like my mother say. My mother says that never and forever are way too long.
Google never forget.
So, they're going to be there on YouTube. Just like last year's is there as well. Last year we had 6 shorter lectures. And we're gonna try to cover about the same amount in fewer hours. Let's see how we do this year. But we invite everybody to come. This is extremely serious here in Canada. Canada is the place that we all chose to live. And it's very important that we understand Canadian society and the differences between what our Brazilian needs in terms of society and more Canadian needs. They are very different. So this is why we do these workshops, so that we can understand. We have children, doesn't matter if it's a boy or a girl, but all of us who have children who are being raised here in Canada need to understand all of this. It's extremely important that we are aware. All right. Whew. I need some music. Oh, I need some water.